The image of a college football program can change just as the generations change. Programs known as the perennial dumpster of the college football landscape can become conference contenders and respectable forces to the point that younger generations didn't even know about the hardships and saturated pain the older generation had to endure. Take Kansas State, for example. While in no way they turned into champions, they evolved from being a dead program worthy of nothing more than the MAC into a significant consistent force within the Big 12. Programs evolve, devolve, and rot over time. A life cycle synonymous with a man, or more accurately, a mullet. Mike Gundy, the captain of the Midwestern ship in Stillwater, Oklahoma. While his track record speaks for itself, there's not many coaches with as much of a legacy of infamy as Gundy. He maintained one of the longest runs a coach has ever had in the modern-day college football ecosystem. In his 21-year-long run, he led Oklahoma State to accolades they couldn't even dream of before his arrival. Big 12 titles, high-tier awards, 18 bowl appearances consecutively, and streaks of which made him the winningest coach in school history. He didn't win Coach of the Year in his time by being mid or uneventful. However, Oklahoma State's fascination with Gundy was like the feeling of having a crush on someone. When it starts and evolves, it's like butterflies everywhere and what feels like a lifetime of happiness and what-ifs. Some of these scenarios wound up being what you thought in your mind, but for many of these cases, including this one, that turns into a slow realization. Knowledge of this not being what you had hoped it was, or simply that these feelings lasted too long. You either retire a hero, or you coach long enough to see yourself become the villain. Gundy's last days as the head coach of the Cowboys highlighted the administration's comprehension of these facts, and he was canned earlier than most coaches from last season. The Roman Empire applies to every college football program. It's got to fall eventually. So the question stands, how was Gundy's tenure at Oklahoma State, and why did it have to end like this? Well, the answer to that can be acquired after hearing from our sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the #1 sports app for making picks, and it's one of the most fun ways to watch sports right now. The app is super easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. And really, that's all there is to it. There are a ton of different sports to choose from. In the NBA, you can pick things like three-pointers made, rebounds, assists, and a huge variety of other stats. I've even been using it for the MLB recently. For example, I made a lineup with Walbert Arena for more than 16.5 pitches thrown, along with 2 other player over-unders to complete the lineup. It's simple and doesn't ask for too much in return. There's always something new to try across different sports and provide ways to keep you engaged with said different sports. You can draw a lineup in esports for shit's sake. PrizePicks is available in over 40 states, including California, Texas, and Florida, so there's a good chance you can play too. And right now, as part of a massive bonus, when you play your first $5 lineup, you can get $50 instantly in lineups. So download the app today and use promo code HMA to get started. And as always, make sure to play responsibly. Looking at you, Brendan Sorsby. Maybe I could have left that part out. Mike Gundy's long history with the Stillwater Cowboys began all the way back in the days of the Florida schools realizing football exists. More specifically, 1986. Gundy would be the quarterback of a small town's high school over in Midwest City, where under Dick Evans would lead himself to the Oklahoma Player of the Year award, an accomplishment that, as expected, drove the interest of the colleges residing within the state. When it was down to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, it was a decision that would come down to which fan base would love you and the other would hate you. I think you know how that ended. When he signed with the Cowboys, nobody would realize just how significant that move would be for the trajectory of the Stillwater program. After becoming the starting quarterback under Pat Jones midway through his freshman year, Gundy went on to become an icon of a player for the Cowboys right next to, ironically from the same squad, Barry Sanders. After Sanders went on to the NFL, Gundy became the all-time leading passer in Oklahoma State and Big 8 conference history. He passed for over 2,000 yards his senior year. Forgetting that they finished 4-7 in that season, this was a massive feat for young Gundy. And while the NFL didn't bother picking him up, it carved the way for Gundy to stay with the Cowboys in a different way. When Gundy graduated, he immediately joined Pat Jones' staff as an assistant receivers coach. He'd climbed the ladder of relevance in the job cycle, eventually getting the job as the offensive coordinator for Oklahoma State. That was at least up until Stillwater Nation realized Pat Jones was a massive fraud. He thought winning 10 games in over 4 seasons was real funny. Gundy spent 1 season with former Colorado D-line coach Bob Simmons before he was given a spot with mid-personified in Chuck Reedy's Baylor Bears. Him and Larry Fedora tried to rekindle the Bears' spirit and instead went down with the sinking ship. Reedy was canned along with anyone else who did anything with him. But Gundy's work went noticed by some, and that includes Ron Vanderlinden, who was just starting his coaching career with Maryland. Gundy was wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator from 1997 to 2000 for the Terps. Vanderlinden preceded Mike Locksley, but the jokes write themselves. The Terps never touched bowl eligibility because they couldn't remember what a W looked like past September. And this was a tank conference! By 2000, that administration had enough and kicked everyone, including Gundy, to the curb again. This leads us to the turn of the millennium and a return for the promised land for Gundy. Bob Simmons resigned for failing to win more than 3 games in his final season. Yeah, right, resigned. Leading them to hire the tight end coach of the Dallas Cowboys, Les Miles. Oh boy. Before he was getting banned from his own college's female student body, he was doing what most tried to do with Oklahoma State and build something competitive in the now Big 12. He'd look to Gundy, of course, for his right-hand man controlling the offense so he can fail to control the clock. Over the next 4 seasons, while they wouldn't be world beaters, they would at least have respectable moments and actually show some capability of winning games and producing talents like Josh Fields and NCAA record-holding receiver Rashawn Woods. He also helped the Cowboys to make it back to bowl eligibility after 5 years in a cellar. Don't ask about the record, though. While there were seemingly limits of what could be done at Oklahoma State, those limits can be surpassed with enough great coaching from Les gone. Bailed to the different leagues as with many. This would obviously mean that 2025 would open up a brand new arc for the stickballers. Seeing an alumni was already high in the pecking order, it didn't take long for Harry Birdwell to make the decision. Funny enough, it was one of the only things he did as their athletic director. On January 3rd of 2005, the vacant job opening was closed within nanoseconds as Gundy was officially hired as the newest head coach of the Cowboys. He would join an archive of the past in Jim Lookaball as one of the only coaches of the program who played for the program. They wanted to sustain the offense Gundy built, and this was obviously the best way of going about it. School president David Schmidley held Gundy in very high regards, stating that he was confident that Mike would take their program to new levels of success with an aggressive young staff. Well, he'd be right about that for what it's worth. Unlike previous coaches discussed on here on Squidtard Sports, Gundy has a cornucopia of experience to use as he takes his first head coaching spot in college football. But the pressure is certainly on. The Cowboys administration has already made it very clear that they are looking for success, and they want it at a record pace. Luckily for them, the Big 12 was more vulnerable than it otherwise was in previous years. Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas Tech were the only real threats for the most part. Bill Snyder's Kansas State just missed a bowl for the first time in 11 years, Nebraska was midway through their downfall, and Dennis Franchione exists. What a better time than now to get the Midwestern ship afloat. So without further ado, at 37 years old, let the cowboy ride! How are there already problems? Well, if the off-the-bat implosion was any sort of teaser for what's to come, it certainly succeeded in that regard. Not only did 11 players get thrown to the piss realm because of off-the-field issues, but another, much worse epidemic occurred during the offseason. Defensive tackle Vernon Grant, one of the leaders of the upcoming squad, tragically lost his life in an automobile accident. He was an inspiration to the team as a whole and started multiple seasons with Oklahoma State. The news came as a shock to everyone involved. Lord rest the legend. As for the season itself, it didn't fare all that great. They finished with a 4-7 record and a team that had the 97th overall offense and defense. Larry Fedora served as offensive coordinator under Gundy and struggled to get the rocks out of his own shoes in the very first year. The Cowboys won the first few games against cannon fodder and then vanished in conference play. The lone accomplishment was the stunner over Texas Tech late in the season that gave them some light going into the next year. That would be the silver lining for Oklahoma State football. This would actually wound up being the last time for a very long time that they would have to endure these hardships. You'll see what I mean about that in due time. Newfound life was discovered in Oklahoma State in 2006. Not that they were suddenly competing for championships, but they were competing in general. Starting with a huge recruiting class for Gundy and the Cowboys, they began to slowly but surely turn the Stillwater ship in the right direction. With an asset like Adarius Bowman shown on the field and Larry Fedora learning how to football again, Oklahoma State managed to make it to the 6-win mark in bowl-eligible status, where they would beat Alabama of all teams in the Independence Bowl. Probably less of an accomplishment in this time frame, but still an accomplishment all the same. The Cowboys finished with the top 10 offense nationally, and along with undefeated Boise State, were one of the 2 teams who averaged 200 passing yards and rushing yards per game. Despite the improvement, Gundy would ensure that his guys knew that they were to be stand-up guys both on and off the field. He's not raising boys, he's raising men. Accountable men. But would that energy reflect in the future? Well, I guess that'll be dependent on what goes down in 2007. Depends on my nuts, I guess. Oklahoma State did not improve all that much, to say the least. Tim Beckman's defense was MIA for a majority of the season, and that certainly showed on the field. But due to a much improved, far stronger offense, Oklahoma State was able to balance that out with a sub-500 record in the conference and a bowl win over Indiana. They somehow had lightning strike in the same place 3,161 times because they tied the amount of passing and rushing yards for the season at that number. Bobby Reed was originally the starter, but he was benched for Zach Robinson, who put the fear into terrible Big 12 defenses. Well, that's not really saying a lot, most of them are terrible. Not to say the season didn't have some hefty hardships. They got raptured by the G5 condoms because the defense couldn't stop an inanimate object. They had multiple close, heartbreaking losses because Gundy was as much of a clutch artist as Brent Pry. That was proven when they blew a 3-touchdown fourth-quarter lead over Texas. To be fair to him, it was 2007. Everyone got a little taste of bullshit. In spite of that, it was mostly a forgettable season with a forgettable record. Mostly being a major key word. Taking back our time machine to specifically September 22nd, following the results of the Texas Tech game of which Oklahoma State came out winners, everyone in Cowboy media had their opinions as you'd expect. And this was the game in which Reed got benched for Robinson. One individual by the name of Jenny Carlson, one of the sports writers of the news outlet from Oklahoma City, had some very blatant criticisms for Reed. She didn't mince words in the slightest, and to say the least, Gundy didn't take too kindly to that, leading us to one of the greatest moments in college football history.
3/4 of this is inaccurate. Here's all that kid did. He goes to class, he's respectful to the media, he's respectful to the public, and he's a good kid. And he's not a professional athlete, and he doesn't deserve to be kicked when he's down. If you want to go after an athlete, one of my athletes, you go after one that doesn't do the right things. You don't downgrade him because he does everything right and may not play as well on Saturday, and you let us make that decision. That's why I don't read the newspaper, because it's garbage, and the editor that let it come out is garbage. Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. I'm not a kid. Write something about me.
Whether or not you agree with him on this alone turned Gundy from a random coach from the Midwest into one of the icons of college football in one fell swoop. This event became synonymous with his name and career with the Cowboys. Now that the pressure was on, Gundy would have to work overtime to make sure that the program kept rising under his tutelage. Larry Fedora packed his shit and went over to the vacant head coaching spot at Southern Miss, which gave Gundy a bigger opening to control the offense. Tim Beckman remained the guy on defense for some reason, which will lead us directly into 2008. Oh, wait a second, maybe that wasn't such a bad idea after all. With all the changes on offense, it was an unknown how much of a step back they were going to take. They didn't. That's the answer. Not only did Oklahoma State set records in ticket sales and attendance, they set records on the field as well. They had 4 straight games of 50 or more points, going to show how they adapted early to what's going to be the Big 12 for the next 15 years. Speaking of 15, that's the ranking Oklahoma State hovered around for a majority of the season. A remarkable feat for a program such as this one. They additionally played spoiler for several teams, including Texas A&M and number 3 Missouri. Zach Robinson and up-and-coming receiver Dez Bryant spearheaded a lethal offense that most couldn't contend with, and while it was far from perfect since nothing they do can beat Texas or Oklahoma, having 500 yards on average in a game is quite the spectacle indeed. Stickballing in the natural order. 2008 was a massive success. Their coaches got poached by other schools, but that led to room for improvement in the form of Bill Young taking over defensive duties for Beckman. Just where do they plan on taking that exactly? Most Oklahoma State fans would consider this a successful year too. 9 wins, Cotton Bowl berth, top 25 finish, but with how much talent was making a comeback this season, it seemed a little lackluster all things considered. Bill Young did indeed do his job though, revitalizing the defense into something more than a rotted wooden fence. But the offense took a massive step backwards. Not every offensive lineman can be Russell Okung though. Things were running incredibly smooth through the first half of the season, but just like Arkansas with the lead, you can never count out some bullshit. The race in the hole on offense gets sent to the piss room for lying to investigators about contracts with a former NFL player. Who is that former NFL player, you ask? Of fucking course it's Deion Sanders. This was back when the NCAA had a pair and actually enforced their rules, so we won't be seeing any more of Dez, unfortunately. Mix this in with Kendall Hunter being brutalized by the injury bug, and it kept the Cowboys from the hype of the season. Despite that, Oklahoma State's 2009 run was no wash, and it set the stage for development through the hiring of Dana Holgorsen away from the Houston Cougars. But you can only hope Brandon Weeden is what they call him out to be. Well, look at that. The elevation of the program we're witnessing is elevating at a consistent and groundbreaking rate. Oklahoma State has now gone from the cannon fodder of the Big 12 to being one of the most lethal threats the conference has to offer. Weeden actually wound up living to his hefty expectations, and part of that was due to the newest ace in the hole, Justin Blackmon. God amongst Cowboys. Holgorsen's air raid system led Oklahoma State to one of the strongest offenses in the land, averaging 520 yards per game. If it weren't for Taylor Martinez, this team had implications as far as the BCS championship. However, that was not yet to be. Keyword being yet. Either way, the Cowboys knocked off Texas for the first time since 1997 and managed to succeed in the goal of an 11-win season, the very first in the program's history. Dana Holgorsen immediately got poached as expected by West Virginia. Don't worry, they're over stuck in the Big East, so he won't be a threat. Gundy would respond with what will go down as probably his best hire of his time, Todd Monken. His mind would pave the way for a potentially stronger offense next season and could end up being the mountaintop of this program. Spoiler alert, it was. This is the best anyone has ever gotten out of the Stillwater program. Weeden and Blackmon only continued to develop a stronger chemistry as the time progressed. Oklahoma State started in the top 10 and stayed there for an extended duration. The Cowboys' balanced attack was prolific, averaging nearly 50 points, 390 yards passing, and 550 total yards of offense per game, each top 3 in all of the FBS. This team was littered to the bone with NFL talent across the board and great coaching to go along with it. The more games they won, the closer and closer they got to seeing the finish line that was a shot at the national championship. But there was a massive roadblock in the size of a fucking tornado in the middle.
To start the second overtime. Ball's in the air! Intercepted by Terry Benton. Woody. Touchdown! They did it!
This monumental loss against Iowa State paved the way for the computers to give America a giant middle finger, and instead of getting Oklahoma State a shot against undefeated LSU, it decided to give another SEC team in Alabama a second chance. Not only did they cuck the Cowboys, but they cucked all of us on the couch as well, with the national championship as innovating as the boys' series finale. If nothing else, Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State as a whole can claim they pioneered the end of the BCS because it damn well sure showed its flaws. Maybe next time, don't lose, I guess? Gundy, despite the unfortunate outcome, led his team to a Big 12 title, a Fiesta Bowl win over Andrew Luck and Stanford, and a 12-win season for the first time in program history. It was more than enough for him to earn Coach of the Year unanimously. If it makes you feel better, the Coley Matrix loved you enough to give you the crown and a blue ribbon. Join 2017 UCF in that abyss. But with this being the cinema that it was for the Cowboy faithful, I can only begin to imagine the heights that await Oklahoma State in the future.
You peaked.
What?
You peaked.
You're kidding! After all that?
Yeah, sorry.
Hard to recover off of the greatest season in football history when all of your talent and everything that made it possible besides Todd Monken goes to the NFL. Having to do the quarterback hokey pokey because they were all bipolar on the field did no good either. Would have been better if the defense made a return. 59 points against the Desert Cats ain't beating nobody. Despite the big numbers, they got mid results. With Monken now gone too, let's hope that we can get better results out of Shippensburg? This season was actually much more of an improvement. Back to winning 10 games, beating Texas, and live leaking a top 3 Baylor shows that Oklahoma State is still playing a very dominant role in the conference. Also the statistically best defense Gundy has ever had, which wasn't even in the top 10. And you lost to the Couchburners. Well, at least there aren't any back-breaking scandals. And in comes Les Miles with a steel chair. Sports Illustrated ran their own investigation against Oklahoma State, citing Gundy potentially being part of an academic scandal going all the way back to the tenure of Les Miles. And since we were talking about Les Miles, we can't forget the part about soliciting sex as an early form of NIL. I think the BYU fans just internally combusted. Either way, nothing actually came of this. The NCAA didn't advance because they were too busy choking the life out of Johnny Manziel. Regardless, great season for the Cowboys, batter up for next year. Hell yeah! A 5-1 start and a near upset over the undisputed defending national champions in Florida State. I've got a good feeling about this one. That would be the case if they didn't follow up said 5-game winning streak with a 5-game losing one. Quarterback Okey Pokey doing what it does best. Nothing. All the Oklahoma State fans just forgot about it the moment they finally won in Bedlam for some reason. That's the only thing Bob Connolly ever did right for them. Well, at least they've got an elite receiver again in Tyreek Hill. Shit. Maybe you can claim him if he's good in the NFL. I present to you the future. Mason Rudolph. Out of nowhere once again, the Cowboys have been given new life. A 10-0 start compared to the collapse from last season shows that Gundy clearly learned a thing or two about choking entire seasons away. Stillwater's hype, Oklahoma State is in the college football playoff conversation.
And nothing can go wrong. Oh no, it all went wrong.
Baylor and Oklahoma had some choice words to say about that poor program, which were eat shit, eat balls, and better yet, eat sugar. Too much of it will make your program rot. Just ask the Cowboys. Maybe next year, Glenn Spencer can remember how to do his job for 12 games instead of 10. And how would he respond to that? How about 0?
Rush, stepping up, throwing to Kroll, catches the lateral. Here comes Willis racing to the end zone. Touchdown! Unbelievable! Central Michigan does it!
That's just wrong in every sense of the word.
If you knew nothing about Gundy and Oklahoma State and their ability to come back from nothing, you'd think this was the end and the rest of the season was a wash. However, as Notre Dame from 2024 could tell you, never count a talent fee out. Somehow they recovered and won 10 games. The defense was almost in the top 50 this time, and the greatest news of all, Gundy got a makeover. He embraced his inner meme and became one with the mullet. Pending it keeps winning, nobody will be able to make a joke about it. Another year, another great season for cowboy culture, which is a thing now because why? I don't know. Oklahoma State fans now care about football, so I sure hope the defense keeps the momentum up and they don't shit the bed again.
Thompson downfield, Pringle, open, there he goes! 4 scores for Byron Pringle!
So, do we owe James Franklin some sort of apology for singling him out? Well, time for another defensive overhaul. Hopefully this time the defense can turn into something productive because now we have... Wait a minute. Why won't you just leave me alone? And this is exactly why I didn't want to speak on it because I can already hear it. Jim knows the defense, Squidtard! You made a bad hire, Squidtard! Well, I guess Oklahoma State would have cut Texas and West Virginia out of the playoff conversation if he wasn't there, right? Probably. I think Taylor Cornelius gets some of the credit for that. Mainly Chuba Hubbard, but also him continued the stride of the offense as you have to in the days of the mid-teens Big 12. Meanwhile, here's the defense. So will they continue to play spoiler, or will they finally have a breakout season everyone's been waiting for? Option C, apparently. Shit on yourself and lose all sight of the light. Different coordinator, same problem, same lack of clutch ball, same old Gundy. Comes with the added side bonus of a true freshman quarterback being thrown to the wolves. Plus 8-5 and a loss to an old-time conference buddy which you've summoned with that record. You get beat by Texas A&M in the postseason. Of all the phenomenal times this program has had with Gundy, this was definitely one of the most forgettable ones. No accolades or scandals to go along with it. Huh? What's that? You wanted scandals?
Well, fuck.
Well, don't mind if I do. Gundy was busted wearing a shirt of a very controversial media company which many of the Oklahoma State players did not take too kindly to, especially Chuba Hubbard, who outright spoke out against his coach because of the time frame this was at. So much for trying to keep the unity, huh, coach? This also pissed off some of the boosters, though, so Gundy took out $1 million from his salary to compensate everybody. The offseason theatrics led to a mundane COVID season for the Cowboys and a finale only the cheesiest would love. Of course, I'm talking about a win in the Cheez-It Bowl. This should have set up for success in the future, but his fate was sealed the moment he did this. Shaving off your brand ahead of the next season practically paints a curse in the distant future for the program. When will the curse hit? That's to be determined for another day. That day is not today. Oklahoma State is closer than ever to being champions. A comeback road win over Texas, a bedlam victory over Oklahoma, and most surprising of all, an elite, yes, elite defense. One that was first nationally in sacks per game, fifth in scoring defense, and third all across the board. Told y'all Jim Knowles knew what he was doing. Guys like Malcolm Rodriguez, Colin Oliver, Jarek Bernard Converse, and Colby Harvell Peel were some of the men on the Legion that made up this elite squad. Plus, he had a benefit of having a Spencer Sanders who could throw sometimes. It seemed like everything was set up for a path to the college football playoffs. But do you remember that old curse we talked about earlier? Call this shit Gemini Home Entertainment, because the curse lives within the bear.
For Oklahoma State, win a conference championship if you score in all likelihood. And perhaps the CFB. Jackson trying to turn the corner, and he did not get there. Jaron McVay raced him to the pylon and made sure he came up inches short.
Some could say they know this feeling all too well, but you were just inches short of a completely changed trajectory for the program. At least you got another Fiesta Bowl victory and a pathway for far more continued success. And Jim Knowles is gone. Well, better fuck up the hire. Oh, hell no! Good job. All according to talent fee. Hell yeah. A 6-1 start and a near upset over the future national champ runner-ups? I've got a great feeling. Wait a minute, haven't we done this before? Yeah, should have seen this one coming. You gave up 44 points to Central Michigan. Did you really think this was the time you were going to come through? To make matters worse, the injury bug ate at what felt like your entire team. At least Derek Mason's out. Batter up for next year. What an anomaly of a season this was for the Big 12. Due to several team implosions, Oklahoma State was able to drag themselves on the floor all the way to the Big 12 championship by accident and/or Ollie Gordon becoming the newest ace in the hole for the Cowboys. He won the Doak Walker, so he must have been doing something right. They brought in Brian Nardo to control the defense, also from Division II by the way, and he was about as bipolar himself as you'd expect. But the Cowboys still had a 10-win season. They gave Oklahoma the boot out of the conference, and Gundy won Big 12 Coach of the Year. Uck still got it. As long as everybody involved conveniently forgets about that South Alabama game, don't worry, it'll be forgotten. Just not in the way you were hoping for. Everything went to hell. Everything. The season was a wash before it even began. Ollie Gordon, who was supposed to be the star of the show, pulled a UGA and landed himself in the Cleveland jail for a DUI. How did Gundy respond to this, you ask? By citing that he used to do it too. Wait, that can't actually be his response, right? 1,000 times? Why? Why? Why in the holy mother of stickball would you actually say that? Whether or not this was supposed to be a joke, the plot was lost long ago, and has been ever since. Want proof of that? Look at the season they had. Worst hangover of all time. Preamble to what's going to feel like a lifetime's worth of suck. Not only did Gundy's team suddenly lose all sense of themselves, but he lost the program by extension. By far, this was the worst team he's ever coached in his 20-year-long run. Coordinated by Nardo, who managed to pull off the unthinkable, he made the worst defense ever in Oklahoma State football history. No, I'm not joking about that. They allowed a school record of 427 total points all season. Mixed in with their newest quarterback asset in Alan Bowman just being Midwestern Jeff Sims riding on a one-legged horse, and you've got yourself a turd squad of epic proportions. As expected, everyone was canned from the program. Of course, besides Gundy, who's more than earned a mulligan. Makes these next hires all the more important going into 2025. Just like with others, he'd look inward for his offensive guy in Doug Meacham. Not the target I had in mind, but you do you. Now, where'd you get the defense? I gotta get up real close in the mic for this one. You hired Todd Grantham.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, I don't even feel bad about what's to come.
Yo, somebody get the door! Who is God?
Pistols fired, and so is everyone else. Somehow, the Stillwater soldiers outdid themselves. Stillwater is in the braid-eating amoeba and the consumption ahead of Oklahoma State's entire staff. I knew Oregon was elite, but once upon a yesterdecade, so was Oklahoma State. They looked like they put a D1 champ against the volunteer high school, the deaf, blind, and morbidly obese. It was their worst loss by deficit since November 8th of 1907, a week before Oklahoma became a state. But the humiliation ritual was only the beginning. 21 years of coaching college football has led to the moment you're about to witness. Either you retire winning a championship, or you coach long enough to get belted by a 4-8 Tulsa. The rest of the season past this point is nothing more than a glorified scrimmage. The rapidly deteriorating administration has seen all they need to see, so they had to make a decision that involves no such cases of nostalgia. Goodbye to Gundy. Well, you had a dadgum good run there, pal. Most college football fans knew this day was likely to come. Similar to Dabo Swinney and many of the old head coaches, they remember only the days of football players playing for tradition and pageantry for their college. Those days are over, and they have been for an extended duration of time. Gundy never bothered to adapt to the current year. He spent around $7 million in NIL over the last 3 seasons. Meanwhile, Oregon spent 6 times that in 1 season. It led to the avalanche-level downfall from the last 2 seasons. As unfortunate as it was, Gundy still had one hell of a run. I was still shitting in my diaper when Gundy took over as Oklahoma State's head coach. Not only did he survive most of these seasons, he thrived. 8 10-win seasons makes him by far the most successful head coach in Cowboy history, a record of which might not be broken for as long as I live. In the modern day, he was the second longest tenured head coach behind Kirk Ferentz of Iowa. Whatever you thought about this guy, his attitudes, his opinions, his bold and brazen statements, you couldn't deny that the role he played in college football culture will last for an eternity. Oklahoma State, and by extension everyone else, will miss the buffoonery he brought to the game. There's no signs that he's going to return to coaching at any level, and with the run he's had, I don't think he'd have it any other way. Thanks for watching, and power to Tardaria.
A big winner after watching their rival State pull off the upset.
Cornelius took a knee and Breckenhager came flying in. I'll tell you what, Herman is absolutely hopping mad. Another flag has been thrown. The coaches both out there getting into it. Wow. Interesting handshake. You think that's what, that's what fired him up was the fact that Gundy came out?
Yeah, that's what he reacted to. He came out first trying to get his players back, and